So, welcome everyone. This is Myths and Truths About Meditation, and my name is Oksana Esberard. And I would not spend much time on my classic bio as much as I wanted to show you my story of meditation. How did I get to the meditation? So, most of you know me as certified business mindfulness and meditation trainer, speaker, and author. And my journey with meditation, really deep dive in meditation, started in 2012. I was in Hong Kong at that time. I lived in Asia, and I was already very, I would say, lost in life in many directions. And at that time, unfortunately, my dad died unexpectedly. And that put me into a total deep hole of anxiety and depression and grief. And I knew that I couldn't get out of it myself. And therefore, I found a holistic center, and I'm not sure, I don't even remember how it led me to it, but I found that holistic center that introduced me first time to many modalities, but one of them was transcendental meditation. And that's where I really started to practice and go that route of exploring what meditation is. And then fast forward several years now I'm even initiating people to meditate and teaching it. So this was my personal journey, and today I wanted to focus and perhaps bust some of the myths that has been blocking you from adapting the practice, but we'll take it from the scientific approach and really experiential approach of what is our personal experience with it. So it would be very unmindful of me if I wouldn't introduce a mindful minute so we can all kind of de-stress and decompress for just a few moments. So let's find that most comfortable position for you. And whenever you feel comfortable, if you can lower your gaze or close your eyes altogether and let's take 3 deep breaths together. Fully exhale through the nose. And then inhale, 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 inhale through the nose until your lungs are full. Slightly pausing at the top, creating that air circulation, the space in the mind and in the chest. And then as slowly and softly as you can, exhaling through the nose, letting everything in the body melt down. Let yourself sink down deeper into the chair. Let's do 2 more of these. Inhale, inhale through the nose, slow and deep, expanding your lungs, expanding your chest. Pausing at the top, closing any mental and emotional files that are open up until this moment. And as you slowly, softly exhaling through the nose, let your body sink deeper, relaxing. Let yourself give in to the gravity. And 1 more. Inhale through the nose. Keep on inhaling, allowing yourself to expand, to create more space. And as you exhale, relax everything down. Feeling yourself fully present in this moment, in your seat, ready to absorb what comes ahead. And then the next inhale, or whenever you're ready, opening your eyes. And shake your hands just a little bit, creating that energy flow. And release your hands down. So I hope that felt nice. So let's dive in, and I'll share my screen here. I wanted to let you know that you can communicate with me via chat, and I'll be monitoring it to see if there are any questions. And I wanted to create today and talk about these 3 myths really that more people I see are stumbling, and we'll unpack some other ones, but these are the key ones. One is quieting the mind. It's like, hey mind, be quiet. And how do I get to find my mind? It seems to be like a lot of people want reconnect meditation with the fact that the mind should be quiet. The second one is, I'm not doing it right, and what does it mean to do it right? And we kind of will talk a little bit of technicalities. And then the third point that I want to talk about is that I don't have time, and actually what is the underlying reason behind that. So, but before we begin unpacking those, I want to talk about and give a brief definition of what meditation is from my perspective. There are many styles of meditations and there are different definitions of it. So the way I define meditation, there are 2 perspectives for it. One is to become familiar with. what we're becoming familiar with is the content of our conscious, subconscious mind, our emotional states, and really what is happening within the body as we are performing the act or the practice of meditation. And I don't know about you, but I have not received the manual to the thing that's happening here to my mind when I was brought into this world. Neither I got the manual for my mind when I was in the university or when I was in school. And therefore, meditation for me is really the closest what I would get to understanding how does that my mind and my body and my whole system works and operates by observing it. And then the second definition is to cultivate who do you want to be, your best self, your best attitudes, knowing your patterns and then eliminating them and really becoming aware in the moment, not after things already happened, but in the moment has the capacity to change and choose different for yourself. Um, the way there are different styles of meditation, and again, I'll share the screen just now to kind of go over very few classic and traditional approaches, so you understand that that's not the point or the focus of the presentation. But I want you to be aware, and these are, I would say, the classic approaches, because the rest of them are really about everybody can invent their own meditation, but there are some that have been proven throughout the times and the thing. So mindfulness meditation, which is really, I would say, one of the newest forms of meditation that was brought in the West about 50 years ago by John Kabat-Zinn, who actually went to India and to Indian Himalayas and I think other parts of India, and he saw the benefit of meditation from those countries, but he realized, being in the medical field, that he cannot bring it the way it's presented there. So he came back to the US, to the Massachusetts Medical School, and he kind of stripped it away, creating the breath and body awareness. And he really called it mindfulness and awareness. And that's what it became. And it's mostly popular. And what you hear about medical and scientific research, that's what's been researched the most, just the components of different isolated technique of paying attention to your body or your breath. The one I personally learned, and that includes transcendental meditation or the Sattva technique that I now learn, I practice and teach, and I'm an initiated master for that, is the mantra-based Vedic meditation. That is the generic name for it, meaning that you're using mantra, which is not the word, it's not the language, it's really a vibration that creates a certain frequency within your mind and within the body in order to reach the certain degree of awareness or consciousness for yourself. And depending on who brought it to the West, like for example, primordial sounds, that is what Deepak Chopra calls it. The Maharaji Transcendental Meditation, if you've heard of Beatles, they were going there in Rishikesh in India, where actually I go and study. And they call it transcendental meditation. And then, as I said, the Sattva technique, it comes from the same origins and traditions. It's using the mantra. Then on the biggest spectrum of things, we have the convergent and divergent focus, meaning that you can zoom in with certain things like the breath or the mantra, or you're actually concentrating on everything around yourself and you're not focusing on anything in particular. And these are different types and techniques of how you can do it. Then, if you've heard or not, there's Vipassana meditation. It's really kind of a 10-day silent retreat that is really intense. If you're new to meditation, I would not recommend you go in there right away. It's really intense. It's mostly concentrating on your senses. I have not done it personally. I do want to. I've done other form of silent retreats, just not Vipassana in particular. But there are centers all around the world. Another thing that I wanted to point out is the heart-centered meditation. Usually when we speak about meditation, a lot of it is actually concentrated on the brain, within the head, prefrontal cortex. But you can also meditate on the heart space, and there are different techniques for that, and it's also a valid forms of meditation. And then lastly, I wanted to mention the moving meditation, and usually these could be walking and a lot of martial arts like Tai Chi, Qigong, and other martial arts that you might heard, they integrate those components of meditation, of moving your body together with the breath and with the mind. And yoga, it also could be a yoga on the Western perspective. It also could be considered a form of meditation, and they have a lot of component of meditation, especially at the end. So when it comes to medical and scientific benefit, I don't want to spend too much time. I will send you as a follow-up an email with some of the resources, and there is a short, like 2-3 minute video that summarizes really well the benefits and scientific benefits of meditation. I would just mention that it reduces anxiety and stress. It's medically proven, studied. It creates higher tolerance, which I think in today's time of coronavirus and social lockdown, these are undoubtful, really great benefits. It creates it builds up the memory, self-awareness, and our decision making. So it's been kind of like the way it impacts our brain capacity, especially growing the gray matter in prefrontal cortex. And also it downregulates our emotional response. It literally reduces amygdala, which creates that stress response where we want to fight, flight, or freeze. So really, really fascinating thing. And there have been studies between the Buddhist monks and just people that meditated for 8 weeks, and the results are profound. So if you have not been into the meditation, it's never ever late to start, and I would highly encourage you to try it out. So let's jump into the myths. I wanted just to check, how are you doing so far? I don't see many videos, but if you have any comments or if I'm going too fast, please type in the chat or let me know. So I want to make sure that we have the feedback and communication loop. So wonderful. I see some thumbs up. Great. So the myth number one about quieting the mind. I have heard many people, and me myself, when I first went to meditate in India, I thought I'll be on the cloud nine, meditating in this complete peaceful and serene environment, and I'm in the Indian Himalayas, and that my mind would be quiet and wonderful. And it was not. My first meditation sucked, and it was chatting, it was complaining, it was judging, it was comparing, and I really was kind of doubting myself and wanting to quiet that mind. As I was progressing and learning and discovering, think about it this way. Your mind took millions of years of evolution to create that level of brain power and brain capacity that none of the other animals on earth have. And now we want to shut it off. It's the same way to say, when I'm meditating, I want to stop my heart, stop my kidneys, stop my liver, and I want everything to be quiet. Our brain activity and the thought process within the mind is a natural consequence of us being active and alive. And therefore, unless you are dead, the brain activity will happen. And I want you to really have that distinction. What we want, though, is to master our capacity. And therefore, remember I was talking about that mind manual, like have you ever got the manual to how to shut down the mind and regulate it so it doesn't go 120 miles per hour when you try to sleep, and at the same time it doesn't fall asleep on you when you're in a key meeting? So that level of self-mastery is what we want to achieve. And meditation is really a fantastic tool for that exploration and training that capacity to regulate yourself on demand. Another thing about quieting the mind is the way our regular lifestyle goes nowadays is we are really high speed. We're stimulating high beta brain waves all the time, and therefore when you sit down to meditate, I would say it's too big gap. Imagine yourself, it's like a car driving 120 miles per hour, and when you sit down to meditate, you're expected to slow down to zero, from 120 right away to full stop. It's just not comfortable, and sometimes it's not possible. So for those of you who has really active, busy mind, I would suggest trying breathing techniques first. It also helps to exercise first, or move the body in just mindful stretch like way. And follow your breathing, regulating yourself, and first reducing your capacity and speed that way, and then maybe spending a few moments in silence and stillness if your mind is really, really active. And that has been proven way more success than if you're just trying to sit down, you're in the middle of something really busy, and you sit down and you try to create that quietness and peace. So, body movement, breathing, that this is where I would recommend anybody to start if you have that hyperactivity. So let me check if there's anything on the chat. So far, so good. So okay, let's then move to myth number 2. I'm not doing it right. Well, chances are you're not, because there's really nobody knows what is right and what is wrong, and nobody can go into your head and tell you. But there are certain guidances and techniques that you can know and adapt in order to understand what is that you're looking for. And I'll share with you the stages of meditation very quickly here via the slides, and that will already give you a little bit of understanding of what are you expecting, and then from there you can kind of start adjusting. So when you're sitting down to meditate, the first thing is withdrawing all the senses. Why? Is because it's familiarizing with internal world, and therefore you want to eliminate the sight, which is 80% of information. You want to be in quiet space so you're not distracted by the noises and the sounds outside. And you want to really be in stillness so your body does not activate itself in all these different directions. So once you got that withdrawal of the senses, and preferably you close your eyes or lower your gaze, you select a point of concentration. Just like we've talked about what kind of styles of meditation are there. It could be the breath, it could be the mantra, it could be a candle, it could be a stone, it could be a flower, whatever point of concentration you have within you, or any sensations of the body. As you concentrate your mind on it, this meditative awareness will happen to you. It's not something that you need to do. It's not something that you kind of like striving for. As you direct your mind in this one point of concentration and eliminate all other distractions, it will happen. It comes with this very good sense of peace and quietness. If your mind is very distracted, it means that you might need to start with the breathing techniques or other things that we just covered. If you can sustain that meditative awareness for a prolonged period of time, what's going to happen is you will enter into what's called pure consciousness, or the quantum field, or this what's called the lack of body awareness, where you kind of become everything and nothing at the same time. And it's really, I would say, like you are floating kind of feeling. You kind of lose the sense of time and space, and that's where the magic happens. That's where a lot of hormones get released into the brain and into the body, and you really disconnect from all this chatter. And that's what the peace that we were looking for in myth number 1. That's where it happens, because you are no longer in your mind. You are below, or kind of like beyond that type of perception for yourself. What is the myth here is, inevitably, even with the best meditators and the Buddhist monks and everything, and everybody who's meditated for 10,000 plus hours, still something will snap you out of that state. Something will ding, something will ring, your body would want to twitch or to itch. And this is for you to expect that you will snap out of it. And it's not about judging and saying, I'm not doing it right, and see, my mind is not quiet. It's about going back to the routine. Just again, withdrawing the senses, starting to concentrate, and let it flow, let it happen. And the good meditation round is about 3 to 4 of these kind of like, I caught myself distracted, I caught myself planning the calendar. And then you gently, softly, as soon as you realize, you bring yourself back. And that is that iron curl for the brain. You wondered, you brought it back. You wondered, you brought it back. Every time when you catch yourself wondering and you're bringing it back intentionally, that's where you're strengthening that muscles of self-mastery. And that is very, very important to realize that and to expect it. So you're not so harsh on yourself. I'm not doing it right, or I'm not understanding what's supposed to happen. So is that awareness. And then the other piece that really, really skyrocketed my personal and professional evolution is finding the teacher. I've done transcendental meditation, as I introduced to you, since 2012. For about 4 years I was doing it by myself, and I'm stubborn. Okay, I'm Russian originally, and I was just stubborn. I'm like, there should be something. But there were times when I would get up from the meditation more upset and frustrated than when I sat down. And it was really, there were no answers, no understanding, no explanations. It wasn't until I went to India and I found my teacher there, Anand Mehrotra, where he introduced me to such blissful and joyful and amazing feelings during the meditation, where I really started to see and feel the impact and change. And the way I look at it, there are kind of like two quotes that I wanted to share. One, I've heard recently, actually with Petra Coach, Emily, who said, if you are inside the jar, you cannot read the label. Our mind is that jar, is that container. And we have our own patterns of thinking, patterns of worrying, patterns of being stressful and fearful. And it's very, very hard for us to see what is on the other side of it. And therefore, you need someone to kind of show you, and that is kind of introduce you to this kind of components. And when I teach meditation, it's not just I gave you technique and you're on your own. It's a lot of explanation. It's a lot of what I call correction of the intellect, where you learn to think about your patterns differently, learn to consider your emotions differently. And that's a really, really big game changer. It was for me, and it is for many students. I would say the most kind of adaptive meditators, they really have the teacher that keep them at check and keep them balanced and have that. And then another quote that I've heard, it was from Rumi, and he's a really great poet and philosopher. Whoever travels without a guide needs 200 years for a 2-day journey. So it's that as coach, as teacher, it's very important to have that anchor for yourself. And I would be thrilled and honored to be your guide if any of you feel trying to start that practice and that process. If not me, then find someone that you can follow and stick to that. Really stick for a while, because then you can really go into the depth and kind of tonalities and technicalities of the practice before you start looping around and mixing up and matching the techniques. And so far so good, guys. I just want to slow down a little, but we have one more myth to cover before we go. Okay, awesome. So the third component that I wanted to cover, and it's the last one for today, is the myth, I don't have time. Well, I say that you do have time for what is urgent and important. You do many, many things during the day, and therefore it's not about the time that we don't have, it's about the why behind the time. And the majority of people would say, yeah, meditation, I like it, it's like a should, it's like the exercise and eating right, but I just cannot stick to the practice. And the majority, there are 2 or 3 components that are missing. For me, the biggest one is the why. Why do you want to meditate? I'll tell you my personal reason and how I got stuck with it. When I was up until the age of 27, my level of worry and anxiety was so severe and so high that it constantly felt like my heart is pumping all the time, and that I would constantly be fearful of things going wrong, and I would wake up already stressed, and my calendar was full, and I was keeping myself busy just not to feel that anxiety. So I would not want to stop at any cost, because anytime when I would pause and stop, it was just like a tsunami wave over me. So I would prefer to be constantly busy and rushed and be out and about in order just not to feel what was happening inside me. And it wasn't until Hong Kong when I actually started to, I was given a task of slowing down and stopping, and where I started to doing it under the guidance and the supervision of these 2 coaches in this wellness center. And it wasn't until I started to really experiment and experience a little more slower pace and the peace when I started to see the value. And when I experienced just the peace and the joy and the calmness, I realized that, wow, I can live this other way. Because until that moment, it was constant rush, constant overpacking, constant overscheduling, and being around people. And that contrast was so striking for me that I said, I don't want to be worried and angry all the time. I actually want to be at this really collected, calm state. the best way I can describe it to you is like coming back home. Home that you enjoy being with, home that gives you comfort and safety and peace inside. But it's the home that is inside that is always with you, that you transport no matter what's going on outside in the environment and no matter where you are at. And as I said, like it does require the discipline, and it certainly for me was the matter of getting rid of that feeling. And I can successfully report that the majority of my experience now, my day to day experience, is actually of peace and quietness inside. Do I get stressed? Absolutely. Do I get worried and fearful? Yes, sometimes daily, but it's not my dominant experience. It's not how I live 24/7, when before the age of 27 that was my constant experience. So this is my why. And there are people that it has been helping with grief. There are people that just feel better. There are people that want to improve sleep. There are different variations, but what is that for you? What is that you want for yourself? And as I was saying, again, it doesn't have to start with a whole full on 30-minute practice. It could be little inserts of every day of a little bit of mindfulness spread out versus the fully blown meditation practice. Maybe the full blown meditation practice is not for you yet. So, for example, right now, with all this craziness that has happened in our business world, I mostly work with C leaders, executives, C level executives, leaders, and entrepreneurs, and they're busy right now, like crazy. And therefore, I created this 2-minute practices, just 2 minutes throughout the day. So total, you will have, I don't know, anywhere between 6 and 8 minutes of practice, but you are committing to 2 minutes at a time, and it already has shown sleep improvement, better mood, better focus. So there are really different things and styles how you can approach it. And by the way, if you're interested in that 2-minute package, if that is something that you can do, definitely reach out and let me know how I can support you with that. So I just wanted to kind of sum it up with the third myth, that I don't have time. It's really about discipline, your why, and creating an approach in it like any other habit. And once you get into it, just like you're brushing your teeth, once you get into the meditation, you don't want to miss a day. You really start feeling so great and so incomplete without it that it starts to happen naturally. But this initial time, I would say, for different people different. It took me 3 years to kind of figure out how to feel joy from it. Certainly I'd be happy to introduce to that joyful part way sooner, but it's usually like any other habit formation. How long does it take you personally to adapt a habit? That's the time that I would budget and consider. So what else did I wanted to share with you? So far so good. I see we are good. Okay. So I just want to share with you the book that literally gave me a different twist and understanding on meditation in particular. And I'll send it via email, but you can write it down. It's The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. If you have not had written that book, first of all, it's a super easy read, and he's such a great entertainer. But he shares his journey with meditation and how he was just obsessed of meditating and quieting his mind, by the way. And I got a pleasure to meet Michael, and it's just been a profound experience. So that book is amazing. Michael Singer, The Surrender Experiment. And then the second book, I really want to recommend you my book, because I wrote it with the intention of sharing of how mindfulness and meditation has changed my life. So it shares the story. It's funny. It's engagement. It's engaging. It's through my personal stories and scientific research weaved into it. And it's a very easy read too. So I always joke, I read it like 8 times. I guarantee it's good. So I had to proofread it 8 times, but it's an entertaining, easy read. So if there are any questions that I could answer before or after, or if you feel like you want to engage with any of the practices, I would be honored and thrilled to hear from you. You have my contact information, or send me the messages and whatever I can support you with. But I hope this has been helpful. And if there's anything that I can answer at this moment, Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining. Thank you so much, guys, for finding the time for yourself. I hope it kind of created a little bit more clarity. I will be following up with an email, sending a few of the resources and the links, and also a replay of this session. So you have that for you. And you can explore and experiment, and I'll be happy to see how I can support you. So we are right on time, being respectful here. Everybody is busy, so hope that it was helpful, and we'll see one another in other channels. So thank you so much, guys. Appreciate your time.